In a small town where dreams often felt too big for the place that held them, there was a young girl named Maya. From a very early age, Maya had always harbored a deep passion for music. She would spend hours singing in her room, her voice soaring with a kind of hope and aspiration that only the truly determined could understand. For Maya, music was not just a hobby, it was her calling. She dreamt of becoming a world-renowned singer, someone whose voice could touch hearts and inspire millions. However, Maya's dream was not met with encouragement by everyone around her. In school, her classmates would often mock her whenever she talked about her ambition. They would laugh, taunting her with hurtful words, telling her that a girl like her from a small town could never make it in the big world of music. "Who do you think you are? Beyoncé?" They'd jeer, their cruel laughter echoing in the hallways. Even some of the adults, including teachers and neighbors, would give her that look, the one that said, "It's good to have dreams, but let's be realistic." Despite the mocking and the doubt that seemed to surround her, Maya held on to her dream with all her might. Every night, after enduring the day's ridicule, she would retreat to her sanctuary, her small, cluttered room, and sing. She poured all her pain, frustration, and hope into her music, using her voice to drown out the negativity that the world seemed so eager to throw at her. Yet, even with her fierce determination, there were moments when the doubts began to creep in. She would stare at herself in the mirror and wonder if everyone else was right. Maybe she was just a small-town girl with a big dream that was too far out of reach. But each time those thoughts began to take hold, she would remind herself why she loved music in the first place. It was her escape, her expression, her very soul. And she knew deep down that giving up was not an option. Maya's mother, a hard-working woman who had seen her own share of struggles, was one of the few who truly believed in her. "Don't let them tell you who you are," her mother would say, her voice filled with quiet strength. "The world doesn't get to decide what you can or cannot do. You do." These words became a lifeline for Maya, a reminder that her dream was hers alone to protect and pursue, no matter what anyone else said. And so, Maya continued to dream, her heart set on a future that seemed impossible to everyone but her. Little did the town know, the very girl they mocked would one day leave them speechless with what she would become. Ava's dream wasn't just a fleeting fantasy. It was a passion that had burned inside her since she was a child. She dreamed of becoming a world-renowned architect, someone who would create buildings that inspired and stood as symbols of progress and hope. Every spare moment she had was spent sketching designs, reading about famous architects, and imagining the structures she would one day create. But in her small town, this dream seemed almost laughable to those around her. Most people, even her classmates and some teachers, couldn't understand why a black girl from a modest background would aim so high in a field dominated by wealthy, often white, men. Every time she shared her dream, it was met with smirks, dismissive comments, or outright ridicule. "You, an architect?" They would sneer. "Maybe you should think about something more realistic." The constant negativity started to seep into Ava's self-esteem, but she held on to her dream tightly, refusing to let go of her vision. She knew deep down that she had the talent and determination to make it, even if no one else believed in her. Her teachers didn't make it any easier. They would give her assignments that were far below her capabilities, never encouraging her to push her boundaries. Some even went so far as to suggest that she was wasting her time and should focus on something more suitable for someone like her. But Ava saw this not as a roadblock, but as a challenge. It made her work even harder, dedicating herself to proving that she was not only capable but destined for greatness. Despite the harsh words and mocking laughter, Ava kept her head high. She knew that one day she would prove them all wrong. And so, with each passing day, her dream became not just a hope, but a mission to show everyone who doubted her what she was truly capable of. As Ava continued to chase her dream, she realized that if she was going to make it, she needed guidance, someone who could teach her what she couldn't learn from books alone. Her small town didn't offer much in terms of opportunities, but Ava was determined. One day, while browsing the internet in the school library, she came across an article about a retired architect named Mr. Jameson, who had designed some of the most iconic buildings in the state. Intrigued, Ava decided to reach out, hoping that he might be willing to offer some advice. It took some courage, but Ava wrote a heartfelt email to Mr. Jameson, explaining her passion for architecture and how much she wanted to learn from someone with real experience. She didn't expect much. After all, why would someone of his stature take time out of their day for a high school girl? But to her surprise, Mr. Jameson replied. He was impressed by her determination and offered to meet her the following weekend to talk. When Ava finally met Mr. Jameson, she was nervous. He was an older man with a kind, weathered face and a deep love for architecture. They sat in a small cafe, where Ava nervously showed him her sketches. To her relief, Mr. Jameson was not only impressed with her talent, but also with her dedication. He saw in her the same passion he once had as a young architect. He agreed to mentor her, offering to review her designs, provide feedback, and even lend her some of his old architectural books. Under Mr. Jameson's guidance, Ava's skills began to flourish. He taught her about the technical aspects of architecture, but more importantly, he encouraged her to think creatively and push the boundaries of conventional design. He became the first person, aside from Ava herself, who truly believed in her potential. And with his support, Ava's confidence grew, and her dream began to feel more achievable. Ava's connection with Mr. Jameson not only provided her with the knowledge she needed, but also reaffirmed her belief that she could succeed. She no longer felt alone in her journey. Now, she had an ally, someone who would help her turn her dream into reality. With her newfound confidence and the mentorship of Mr. Jameson, Ava began to take bigger steps toward her dream. She entered local design competitions, spending hours perfecting her submissions, hoping that her work would start gaining recognition. But while Ava was making strides in her journey, the negativity from her classmates and even some teachers continued. At school, Ava's ambition made her a target for ridicule. Some students mocked her for dreaming too big, especially because no one from their small town had ever pursued a career in architecture, let alone a young black girl. They would sneer at her in the hallways, making snide remarks about how she was wasting her time and should focus on something more realistic. Even some of her teachers, who should have encouraged her, questioned her aspirations, suggesting that she should aim for a more practical career. The harsh words stung, but Ava refused to let them break her spirit. She remembered Mr. Jameson's advice. Great architects are those who can see the potential in things others overlook. Ava decided that she wouldn't let small-mindedness stand in the way of her big dreams. Instead of shrinking in the face of criticism, Ava used it as fuel. She worked even harder, spending late nights at her desk, sketching out new designs and refining her ideas. She would often meet with Mr. Jameson on weekends to review her work, and his positive reinforcement gave her the strength to keep going. One day, after submitting a design to a statewide competition, Ava overheard a group of classmates mocking her entry. "She thinks she's going to win. She's just setting herself up for failure," one of them jeered. But instead of feeling defeated, Ava smiled to herself. She knew that real success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about staying true to her own vision. Ava's resilience began to show in her work. Her designs became bolder, more innovative, and her passion for architecture only deepened. She understood that the road to success was never easy, and that the doubts of others often reflected their own fears and limitations. But Ava was determined to rise above it all, focusing on the future she was building for herself. A few weeks after submitting her design to the statewide competition, Ava received an unexpected letter in the mail. The envelope was plain, with no return address, but as she held it in her hands, she felt a flutter of nerves. Could this be the result of the competition? Her heart pounded as she tore open the envelope and pulled out the letter inside. As she read the first few lines, her eyes widened in disbelief. Ava had not only been selected as a finalist in the competition, but her design had also earned the highest praise from the judging panel for its creativity and innovative use of space. The letter went on to explain that as a finalist, Ava was invited to present her design at a prestigious awards ceremony in the state capitol. The event would be attended by renowned architects, industry professionals, and educators from across the country. It was an opportunity that could open doors for Ava in ways she had never imagined. Overwhelmed with emotion, Ava ran to show the letter to her parents. They had always supported her dreams, but this was the first tangible sign that Ava's hard work was paying off. Her mother hugged her tightly, tears of pride in her eyes, while her father smiled broadly, clearly impressed by his daughter's achievement. Ava couldn't wait to share the news with Mr. Jameson. When she showed him the letter, his face lit up with pride. "I knew you had it in you, Ava," he said, beaming. "This is just the beginning. You're going to do great things." As the news of Ava's achievement spread, the reactions at school were mixed. Some of the students who had mocked her now looked at her with a newfound respect, while others were stunned into silence. Ava's teachers, who had doubted her abilities, were forced to acknowledge her talent. But for Ava, this was more than just a victory. It was proof that her dreams were valid and that she was capable of achieving them, despite the doubts and obstacles. The upcoming awards ceremony would be her chance to shine, and she was determined to make the most of it. As the day of the awards ceremony approached, Ava threw herself into preparing her presentation. This wasn't just a moment to showcase her design. It was a chance to make a statement about who she was and what she was capable of. She knew the stakes were high, but rather than feeling intimidated, she felt energized. Mr. Jameson offered to help her fine-tune her presentation, giving her tips on how to clearly explain her ideas and anticipate questions from the judges. They spent hours in the classroom after school, going over every detail, practicing her delivery, and refining her visual aids. Mr. Jameson reminded Ava that her confidence and passion for architecture were just as important as the technical aspects of her design. At home, Ava's parents supported her in every way they could. Her mother helped her choose a professional outfit for the ceremony, something that made her feel both comfortable and confident. Her father, who worked as a mechanic, even took extra shifts to ensure they could afford the trip to the state capitol, where the ceremony would be held. Ava's determination to succeed began to attract attention at school. Students who had previously ignored her were now curious about her work, and some even asked to see her design. The same peers who had once mocked her now treated her with a mixture of respect and curiosity, as if they were seeing her in a new light. Though some still whispered behind her back, Ava was too focused on her goal to let it affect her. The night before the ceremony, Ava couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts of how far she had come and what lay ahead. She reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point, the challenges, the doubts, the moments of loneliness, and realized how much stronger she had become because of them. When the morning of the ceremony finally arrived, Ava felt a mix of nerves and excitement. As she and her parents drove to the state capitol, she gazed out of the window, watching the scenery change from the familiar streets of her hometown to the bustling avenues of the city. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on her. This was the beginning of something big. Arriving at the grand venue where the award ceremony was being held, Ava was struck by the scale of the event. The building was an architectural marvel in itself, with towering glass walls and sleek modern design, a fitting place to celebrate the future of architecture. Inside, the atmosphere was electric, filled with the buzz of excitement as finalists from all over the state mingled, their portfolios in hand. Ava's parents gave her an encouraging smile as they parted ways at the entrance, taking their seats in the auditorium while she headed to the preparation area. Here, Ava found herself surrounded by other young architects, each one seemingly more confident and composed than the next. As she set up her presentation, she couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversations, where her peers discussed their designs, each more elaborate and groundbreaking than the last. Doubt began to creep in. Could her work really stand out among so many other talented students? But Ava reminded herself of what Mr. Jameson had told her. It wasn't just about the design itself, but about how she communicated her vision. With this thought in mind, she took a deep breath and focused on the task at hand. When it was finally her turn to present, Ava walked into the judging room with her head held high. The panel of judges sat at a long table, their expressions neutral as they greeted her. She introduced herself, took a deep breath, and began her presentation. As she spoke, Ava's nerves began to settle. She explained the inspiration behind her design, drawing from her experiences growing up in her community. She highlighted the practical elements of her design, but also spoke passionately about her belief that architecture could be a tool for social change, creating spaces that brought people together and fostered a sense of belonging. The judges listened intently, occasionally nodding or jotting down notes. When Ava finished, there was a moment of silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Then, one of the judges leaned forward, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Your design is impressive, Ava, especially considering the unique perspective you bring to the table," the judge said. "But I have to ask, what would you do if you had the resources to expand on this concept? Where would you take it next?" Ava hadn't expected this question, but she realized it was an opportunity to show even more of her creativity and vision. She responded confidently, outlining her ideas for how her design could be adapted and scaled to fit different environments, and how she envisioned it becoming a model for future community-focused projects. The judges exchanged glances, clearly impressed. As Ava left the room, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. She had done it. She had held her own in front of some of the most respected architects in the state. However, just as she was about to return to her seat, she overheard a conversation that made her stop in her tracks. One of the judges was speaking to another contestant, congratulating him on his presentation and mentioning that they were particularly excited about a new category they were introducing this year, a category that hadn't been announced to the finalists. Confused, Ava quickly made her way back to her parents, who were waiting anxiously in the auditorium. As they sat together, the ceremony began, and it wasn't long before the host announced the creation of a special award, meant to recognize innovative designs that broke the mold and addressed social issues through architecture. Ava's heart raced as she realized what this meant. The judges had seen something in her work, something they hadn't anticipated, and had created an entirely new award category just to acknowledge it. As Ava sat in her seat, the excitement in the auditorium was palpable. The announcement of the new award category had caught everyone by surprise, and now all eyes were on the stage as the host continued to speak. "This year," the host began, "we have seen such an incredible range of talent, creativity, and vision that the judges felt compelled to recognize a project that didn't just stand out architecturally, but also demonstrated a commitment to using design as a force for social good. This award goes beyond traditional categories. It's for a student whose work represents not just a building, but a philosophy, a movement." Ava's heart pounded in her chest. Could it really be? She glanced at her parents, who looked equally anxious, their hands tightly clasped together. The host's words seemed to hang in the air, each one building up the anticipation. And so, it is with great pleasure that we introduce the Innovation in Social Impact Award, the host announced, pausing as the audience murmured in curiosity. This award goes to a student whose vision for inclusive, community-centered design has not only impressed our judges, but has also inspired us to think about architecture in a whole new way. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Ava Bennett. The room erupted in applause, and Ava felt a rush of emotions, disbelief, joy, and pride all mingling together. She had done it. The very ideas that some had mocked, the dream that had once seemed so impossible, had been recognized at the highest level. As she stood up to make her way to the stage, her legs felt like jelly, but the thunderous applause from the audience gave her strength. With each step, she felt more confident, more assured that this was where she was meant to be. When Ava reached the stage, the host handed her the award, a sleek, modern sculpture that symbolized innovation and progress. As she held it in her hands, the weight of it felt symbolic of all the hard work and determination that had brought her to this moment. Ava took a deep breath as she approached the microphone. She looked out at the sea of faces, her peers, the judges, her parents, and the mentors who had supported her along the way. This was her moment to speak, to share her journey and her vision with those who had doubted her. "Thank you," Ava began, her voice steady despite the surge of emotion she felt. "This award means more to me than I can express. It's a validation not just of my design, but of the belief that architecture can be a powerful tool for change. Growing up, I often felt like my dreams were too big, too ambitious for someone like me. But I've learned that the only limits we have are the ones we place on ourselves." The audience was silent, hanging on to every word. "I dedicate this award to my community," Ava continued, her voice gaining strength. "To those who have been told they don't belong, who have been made to feel like their voices don't matter. This is for you. We have the power to shape the world around us, to create spaces where everyone is welcome and valued." Ava glanced over at the judges, who were nodding in approval, clearly moved by her words. She had not only won an award, but had also captured their respect. As Ava finished her speech, the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Tears welled up in her eyes as she took it all in, the recognition, the validation, and the realization that this was just the beginning of her journey. What she had achieved today was not just a personal victory, but a message to everyone watching. Dreams, no matter how big or improbable they may seem, are worth pursuing. After the ceremony, Ava found herself surrounded by well-wishers, fellow students, and professors who congratulated her on the groundbreaking award. The recognition she received was overwhelming, but she knew not everyone was happy with her success. In the days that followed, Ava noticed a shift in the atmosphere at school. While many were genuinely supportive, there were others who seemed distant, their congratulations tinged with resentment or skepticism. Whispers followed her down the halls, some questioning her win, others speculating about how she had managed to gain the judges' attention. One day, as she entered the design studio, she overheard a group of students discussing her project. "I don't get it," one student said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Sure, it's a nice idea, but it's just a feel-good project. It's not real architecture." "Yeah," another chimed in. It's like she played the social impact card to win. This isn't what architecture is about. Ava felt a pang of hurt, but she also knew this was part of breaking new ground. Not everyone would understand or appreciate her vision right away. She could either let the criticism bring her down or use it to fuel her determination. Deciding on the latter, Ava began to engage with her critics, not defensively, but with a genuine desire to explain her approach. She started attending more workshops and seminars, sharing her ideas and listening to others' perspectives. She invited her peers to collaborate on projects that integrated traditional architectural principles with social innovation, showing them how the two could complement each other. Gradually, attitudes began to shift. The same students who had once dismissed her work started to see the value in what she was doing. They recognized that Ava wasn't just trying to be different for the sake of it. She was genuinely passionate about using architecture to make a positive impact. One of the most vocal critics, a student named Mark, approached her after class one day. "Ava," he said, his tone more respectful than it had been before, "I didn't get it at first, but I've been thinking about what you said. There's more to architecture than just the technical stuff, isn't there? You've opened my eyes to that." Ava smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond winning any award. "That's all I ever wanted, Mark," she replied, "to show that architecture can be a force for good, that we can build not just structures, but communities." From that point on, Ava noticed a growing respect among her peers. While not everyone agreed with her approach, they acknowledged her dedication and the validity of her ideas. The conversations shifted from skepticism to curiosity, and soon, Ava found herself collaborating with some of the very students who had once questioned her. The transformation was not just in her classmates, but in the culture of the school itself. Ava had sparked a dialogue about what architecture could be, and in doing so, she had turned her critics into allies. As Ava continued to immerse herself in her studies and collaborations, she realized that her journey was about more than just her individual success. It was about building bridges between different ideas, perspectives, and communities. She wanted to bring people together through architecture, both inside and outside the academic world. Inspired by her award-winning project, Ava decided to take her vision beyond the confines of the university. She reached out to local organizations and community leaders who were working on urban renewal projects in underprivileged areas. Her goal was to apply her architectural skills to real-world problems, creating spaces that would serve the needs of the people living in these communities. Ava organized workshops in these neighborhoods, inviting residents to share their thoughts and ideas about what they needed and wanted in their living spaces. These sessions were eye-opening, as Ava learned firsthand about the challenges and aspirations of people who had often been overlooked by traditional architectural projects. Through these interactions, Ava built strong relationships with community members, who appreciated her genuine interest in their well-being. They saw her not just as an outsider or a student, but as a partner in their efforts to improve their living conditions. Ava's professors and peers took notice of her work outside the university. They were impressed by her ability to connect with people from different backgrounds and to translate their needs into thoughtful, functional designs. Ava's projects became case studies in how architecture could be both innovative and socially responsible. As Ava's reputation grew, she was invited to speak at conferences and seminars on the future of architecture. She shared her experiences and emphasized the importance of listening to the communities architects serve. Her message was clear: architecture should not just be about aesthetics or prestige, it should be about creating spaces that enhance people's lives. Ava's approach resonated with many in the architectural community, sparking discussions about the role of social responsibility in design. Her work inspired others to consider how they could use their skills to make a difference in the world. Through her efforts, Ava not only transformed the way her peers and professors viewed architecture, but she also made a tangible impact on the lives of those she worked with. She had taken the criticism she faced and used it to fuel a movement toward more inclusive, community-focused design. Ava's journey was far from over, but she had already accomplished something remarkable. She had built a bridge between the academic world and the real world, between traditional architecture and social innovation. And in doing so, she had shown that architecture could indeed be a force for good. Ava's work in the community and her rising influence in the field of architecture marked a significant turning point in her life. As she continued to gain recognition, she was approached by a major architectural firm known for its cutting-edge designs and high-profile projects. They offered her an internship with the promise of a full-time position after graduation, a dream opportunity for any aspiring architect. However, the firm's focus was primarily on luxurious, high-end developments, catering to the elite. While the offer was tempting, Ava couldn't ignore the values she had developed during her time working with underprivileged communities. She knew that accepting the offer might mean compromising on the type of work she was passionate about, work that had a meaningful impact on society. Ava found herself at a crossroads. On one hand, the internship offered financial security, prestige, and the chance to work on some of the most innovative projects in the world. On the other hand, it felt like a step away from the path she had carved out for herself, one that prioritized people over profit. Conflicted, Ava sought advice from her mentors and community partners. They reminded her of the importance of staying true to her principles and the vision she had for her career. They encouraged her to consider how she could use her talents to continue making a difference, even if it meant taking a less conventional route. After much reflection, Ava made a bold decision. She turned down the internship offer and instead decided to start her own architectural practice, focused on community-driven projects. It was a risky move, but one that aligned with her values and long-term goals. Ava's decision shocked many of her peers, who couldn't understand why she would walk away from such a prestigious opportunity. Some even warned her that she was making a huge mistake. But Ava knew in her heart that she was doing the right thing. She used the connections she had built in the community to secure her first few projects, small scale but impactful. Ava's firm quickly gained a reputation for its innovative, socially responsible designs, and she began to attract like-minded clients and collaborators. The decision to start her own practice was not without challenges. There were times when Ava doubted herself, wondering if she had made the right choice. But every time she saw the positive impact her work had on people's lives, she knew she was on the right path. Ava's story began to spread, inspiring other young architects to think beyond the traditional definitions of success in their field. She had not only defied expectations, but had also set a new standard for what it meant to be a socially conscious architect. Years passed, and Ava's architectural practice flourished. She became known not only for her innovative designs, but also for her unwavering commitment to social justice and community empowerment. Her projects, which ranged from affordable housing complexes to community centers and sustainable urban developments, stood as testaments to her belief that architecture should serve all people, not just the privileged few. Ava's influence extended far beyond the buildings she designed. She was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and forums around the world, where she shared her journey from being the girl mocked for her dreams to becoming a pioneering architect who redefined the industry's priorities. Her speeches were filled with passion and sincerity, resonating with audiences who were inspired by her courage to follow her principles despite the challenges she faced. One day, Ava received a letter from her old school, inviting her to speak at their graduation ceremony. It was an emotional moment for her, as she reflected on how far she had come since her days as a student with big dreams and a burning desire to prove herself. She accepted the invitation, eager to return to the place where her journey had begun. Standing on the stage of her old school, looking out at the faces of the next generation, Ava felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She spoke to the students about the importance of perseverance, the value of staying true to oneself, and the power of turning adversity into strength. She encouraged them to dream big and to never let others define their worth or limit their potential. As she spoke, Ava noticed a young girl in the audience who reminded her of herself at that age, full of hope and ambition, but also uncertain about the future. After the ceremony, the girl approached Ava, telling her how much she admired her work and how she, too, wanted to become an architect someday. In that moment, Ava realized that her journey had come full circle. She had not only achieved her dreams, but had also become a beacon of hope for others. Her legacy was not just in the buildings she designed, but in the lives she touched and the inspiration she sparked in those who followed in her footsteps. Ava's story was one of triumph over adversity, of staying true to one's values, and of using one's talents to make the world a better place. It was a story that would continue to inspire others for generations to come. And so, Ava left the stage, knowing that she had made a lasting impact, one that would endure long after the applause had faded. She had turned her dream into a reality, and in doing so, had shown the world that with determination and integrity, anything is possible.